There is a prison most men never escape from, and it is not made of iron bars or concrete walls. It is constructed from assumptions, projections, and the desperate need to be right about someone else. We build entire towers of judgment in our minds about the women we encounter, and then we wonder why we feel lost, betrayed, or confused when reality refuses to match our blueprint. The Stoics understood something we have forgotten in our frantic modern lives: that to truly see another human being, we must first learn to see past ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote in his Meditations that we should look beneath the surface of things to understand their true nature. He was not speaking merely of objects or events, but of people. Of the complex, contradictory, beautiful chaos that is human nature. When we approach women with the intention to understand rather than to judge, we step into a realm of wisdom that transforms not just our relationships, but our entire experience of existence. Before we continue, I want you to consider this. Have you been seeing people as they are, or as you need them to be? And if you are ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about understanding others, then stay with me, because what comes next will reshape how you perceive the world around you. The first obstacle to true understanding is the assumption that we already understand. We meet someone, and within moments, our mind has categorized them, predicted their behavior, and written the story of who they are. This is not wisdom. This is self-protection masquerading as knowledge. The Stoics taught us that our perceptions are not reality itself, but merely our interpretations of reality. Epictetus reminded his students that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. When you believe you have figured out a woman based on superficial observations or past experiences with others, you are not seeing her. You are seeing your own mental projection, a ghost of your own making. Women, like all human beings, are shaped by forces we cannot immediately see. Their childhood wounds, their cultural conditioning, their unspoken fears, their hidden dreams. All of these currents run beneath the surface of their words and actions. When we judge based only on what is visible, we are like sailors who navigate by looking at the surface of the ocean while ignoring the deep currents below. We end up confused when we drift off course, never realizing that we were never truly paying attention to what was actually moving us. The Stoic art of understanding begins with intellectual humility. It requires us to admit that we do not know, that we cannot know, the full depth of another person's interior world. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. How many times have you created an entire narrative about why a woman said something, did something, or did not do something, only to discover later that your story was completely wrong? This is the tax we pay for arrogance, the arrogance of certainty in a world that offers us only approximations and shadows. To see through women is not to manipulate or control them. That interpretation comes from a place of ego, from the desperate need to maintain power in a world that feels chaotic and uncertain. No, to see through women means to see through the layers of performance, defense mechanisms, and social conditioning that all humans wear like armor. It means recognizing that behavior is communication, that coldness is often fear, that distance is sometimes self-protection, and that anger frequently masks hurt. When Marcus Aurelius faced difficult people in his court, he did not immediately condemn them. He asked himself what beliefs and experiences might have shaped them into who they were. This is the practice we must cultivate. Understanding without judgment does not mean we accept harmful behavior or sacrifice our boundaries. The Stoics were not doormats. They believed deeply in virtue, in personal responsibility, in the cultivation of character. What they opposed was the reactive mind, the mind that leaps to conclusions and then hardens around them like cement. When you judge, you close the door to learning. When you seek to understand, you open yourself to the complexity of truth. There is a vast difference between saying someone is cruel and recognizing that someone is acting from pain. One assessment ends the conversation. The other begins it. We must also understand that women are not a monolithic category to be decoded like a puzzle. Each woman is an individual universe of experience, preference, and perspective. The moment we think we have figured out women as a category, we have already lost the thread of wisdom. Seneca cautioned against generalizations that rob us of nuance. He knew that the mind loves simplicity, but reality offers us complexity. Our task is not to simplify women into manageable concepts, but to develop the strength and patience to engage with complexity itself. The practice of seeing clearly requires us to separate observation from interpretation. This distinction is foundational to Stoic philosophy. When you observe that a woman has canceled plans, that is a fact. When you interpret that cancellation as disrespect, manipulation, or loss of interest, you have moved into the realm of judgment. The Stoics trained themselves to pause in that space between observation and interpretation, to recognize that infinite possibilities exist in that gap. Perhaps she canceled because she is overwhelmed. Perhaps because she is testing boundaries. Perhaps because she genuinely had an emergency. Perhaps because she is afraid of intimacy. Each interpretation leads to a different response, a different emotional reaction, and a different trajectory for the relationship. So how do we train ourselves to observe without immediately layering our interpretations onto reality? The answer lies in disciplined awareness. Every day, the Stoics practiced examining their own thoughts, their automatic reactions, their unquestioned assumptions. They understood that the untrained mind is a tyrant, constantly generating stories that may or may not be true. When you notice yourself forming a judgment about a woman's behavior, pause. Ask yourself what evidence you have. Ask yourself what assumptions you are making. Ask yourself if there are alternative explanations you have not considered. This is not weakness. This is the strength of a disciplined mind. There is also great power in recognizing patterns without becoming enslaved to them. Yes, human beings often display predictable behaviors. Yes, there are psychological patterns that emerge across genders, cultures, and contexts. The wise person observes these patterns without rigidly applying them to every individual situation. Think of patterns as weather systems, useful for general prediction, but never absolute in determining what any given day will bring. When you meet a woman who displays certain behaviors, your pattern recognition might suggest certain possibilities. But the Stoic remains flexible, always willing to update their understanding when new information arrives. One of the most profound practices in Stoic philosophy is the discipline of empathy. Not empathy as sentiment or pity, but empathy as cognitive perspective taking. Marcus Aurelius would regularly practice imagining himself in the position of others, trying to understand their motivations and constraints. When you practice this with the women in your life, something remarkable happens. You begin to see that most human behavior makes sense from the inside, even when it appears irrational from the outside. The woman who seems controlling might be desperate for safety in a world that has hurt her before. The woman who appears emotionally distant might be protecting herself from vulnerability she cannot afford. None of this excuses harmful behavior, but it does provide context that transforms how we respond. The Stoics also understood the danger of our own emotional investment clouding our perception. Seneca wrote extensively about the need to maintain rational distance from our passions, not because passion is wrong, but because it distorts our vision. When you desperately want a woman to be your ideal partner, you will unconsciously filter information to support that desire. You will minimize red flags and amplify green ones. Conversely, when you have been hurt, you will see danger everywhere, interpreting neutral behaviors as threats. The practice here is to recognize your emotional state and how it might be coloring your perception. Are you seeing her, or are you seeing your need for her? Are you seeing her flaws, or are you seeing your fear of being hurt again? If you have found value in this exploration so far, consider subscribing to this channel. We dive deep into these ancient principles not as abstract theory, but as practical tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. The question of authenticity is central to understanding women without judgment. We live in an era of performance, where social media and cultural expectations create immense pressure to present a curated version of the self. Both men and women struggle with this, but women often face unique pressures around appearance, likability, and emotional labor. When you encounter a woman who seems inconsistent between what she says and what she does, the first question should not be whether she is lying or manipulating. The first question should be whether she is caught between competing demands, her authentic self and the version of herself she believes she must present to be accepted, loved, or safe. The Stoics distinguished between what is in our control and what is not. You cannot control whether a woman is genuine with you. You cannot control her past, her wounds, her defense mechanisms, or her level of self-awareness. What you can control is your own clarity, your own standards, and your own responses. The wise person does not become bitter about what they cannot control. They become masterful at what they can. When you accept that you cannot force someone to be who you want them to be, you paradoxically become better at seeing who they actually are. The desperation to change reality is what blinds us to it. There is a particular form of suffering that arises from the gap between expectation and reality. The Stoics called this a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of existence. We expect people to behave according to our internal logic, our moral framework, our emotional needs. When they do not, we feel betrayed, confused, or angry. But the universe does not owe us consistency. People do not owe us perfect rationality. Women do not owe us behavior that makes sense from our perspective. What we owe ourselves is the wisdom to engage with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. This brings us to one of the most challenging aspects of understanding without judgment, the recognition of contradiction. Women, like all humans, contain multitudes. They can be strong and vulnerable, confident and insecure, generous and self-protective, all within the span of a single day or even a single conversation. Our minds struggle with this because we crave simplicity and consistency. We want to know if someone is good or bad, safe or dangerous, worth our time or not. But reality refuses these simple categories. The Stoic practice is to develop the mental flexibility to hold contradiction without needing to resolve it prematurely. Epictetus taught that we should concern ourselves only with our own virtue, our own character, our own responses. When you make it your mission to understand a woman without judging her, you are not absolving her of responsibility for her actions. You are freeing yourself from the exhausting task of being her moral arbiter. You can observe that someone is acting in ways that are incompatible with your values or needs, and you can create distance or boundaries without needing to condemn them as fundamentally flawed. This distinction is subtle but profound. It is the difference between saying this person is not right for me and saying this person is wrong. The art of asking better questions is central to seeing clearly. When something confuses you about a woman's behavior, what question are you asking? If you are asking why is she doing this to me, you are centering yourself and likely missing crucial information. Better questions might include what might she be afraid of, what need might she be trying to meet, what belief might be driving this behavior, or what pattern from her past might be repeating here. These questions open investigation rather than closing it with judgment. They invite curiosity rather than defensiveness. True understanding also requires us to acknowledge our own role in the dynamic. We are never mere observers of relationships. We are participants, co-creators of the patterns that emerge. When a woman responds to you in a particular way, your energy, your assumptions, and your previous actions have created part of the context for that response. The Stoics emphasized personal responsibility not as self-blame, but as self-empowerment. When you recognize your own influence, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a victim of mysterious female behavior and start being a conscious participant in relationship dynamics. There is also wisdom in recognizing what the Stoics called preferred indifference. These are things that are naturally preferable but not essential to our well-being or virtue. A woman's approval, affection, or validation falls into this category. It is natural to want these things. It is human to prefer connection to isolation. But the moment we make these things necessary for our peace of mind, we have enslaved ourselves. When you can see a woman clearly without needing her to be anything other than what she is, you have achieved a form of freedom that no external circumstance can take from you. This is not coldness or detachment. It is the warm, stable center from which genuine connection becomes possible. Many men struggle to understand women because they approach the task with anxiety, with neediness, or with the desperate hope that if they just decode the pattern, they will finally get what they want. But understanding born from desperation is always partial and distorted. The Stoics practiced equanimity, not as indifference, but as stable-mindedness regardless of external circumstances. When you can remain calm and clear whether a woman chooses you or rejects you, responds warmly or coldly, is consistent or unpredictable, then and only then can you truly see what is happening. Your emotional turbulence is the static that prevents clear reception of the signal. As we move toward the conclusion of this exploration, let us consolidate the practices that allow us to see through women with the Stoic art of understanding without judging. The first practice is the discipline of suspended judgment. Train yourself to extend the pause between observation and interpretation. When you notice a behavior, sit with the discomfort of not immediately knowing what it means. This space is where wisdom grows. The rushed judgment is almost always incomplete, colored by ego, fear, or desire. The second practice is pattern recognition without pattern imprisonment. Study human psychology, understand evolutionary dynamics, learn about attachment styles and trauma responses. This knowledge is valuable, but hold it lightly. Be willing to be surprised. Be willing to discover that this particular woman defies the pattern you expected. The map is not the territory, and the pattern is not the person. The third practice is radical responsibility for your own emotional state. Before you interpret her behavior, check your own internal weather. Are you hungry, tired, stressed, or triggered by something unrelated to this interaction? The Stoics understood that our judgments often say more about our internal state than about external reality. When you are centered and calm, you see more clearly. When you are reactive and destabilized, you see threats and slights everywhere. The fourth practice is the cultivation of genuine curiosity. Approach women as teachers, as bearers of perspectives and experiences different from your own. What can you learn from how she navigates the world? What does her behavior reveal about the challenges she faces? Curiosity is incompatible with judgment. When you are genuinely curious, you cannot simultaneously be closing the door on someone with a label or conclusion. This curiosity must be authentic, not strategic. It cannot be a manipulation technique designed to make her like you. It must be a genuine orientation toward learning and growth. The fifth practice is the maintenance of strong personal boundaries alongside compassionate understanding. You can understand why someone behaves in a certain way without accepting that behavior in your life. You can recognize someone's pain without making it your responsibility to fix. The Stoics were clear about this. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. You can hold space for someone's complexity while still honoring your own needs, values, and limits. This is not contradiction. This is maturity. In the end, the Stoic art of understanding women without judging them is really about understanding humanity without judging it, and that begins with understanding ourselves without judgment. We are all struggling with the human condition, the gap between who we are and who we wish to be, the weight of past wounds, the fear of future pain, the longing for connection alongside the terror of vulnerability. When you recognize this struggle in yourself, you begin to recognize it in others. This is the foundation of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius spent his life trying to be a good man in difficult circumstances. He faced war, betrayal, plague, and the crushing weight of imperial responsibility. Yet his meditations return again and again to the theme of understanding others with patience and compassion, even when they disappoint or frustrate him. He wrote that the impediment to action advances action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. The woman who confuses you is not an obstacle to understanding. She is the very ground on which understanding must be built. So I invite you to take this practice into your daily life. The next time you find yourself frustrated, confused, or disappointed by a woman's behavior, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself what you are assuming. Ask yourself what you might be missing. Ask yourself what pain or fear might be driving her actions. Ask yourself what you can control in this situation, and what you must accept. This is not easy work. It requires constant vigilance, constant correction of course, constant humility in the face of how little we truly know. But this is the path of the Stoic, not the easy path of reactive judgment, but the harder, wiser path of disciplined understanding. And on this path, you will find that your relationships deepen, your conflicts decrease, your inner peace stabilizes. You will find that when you stop needing to be right about who someone is, you create space for them to show you who they might become. You will find that the prison of assumptions and judgments you have been living in has no lock. You were always free to walk out. You simply had to develop the wisdom to see that the bars were never real. If this resonates with you, if you feel the stirring of something deeper than quick answers and simple techniques, then subscribe to this channel. We are building a community of people who refuse the shallow narratives of modern life and instead commit to the ancient path of wisdom, virtue, and self-mastery. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me which practice you will implement first. And remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is progress, one observation at a time, one suspended judgment at a time, one moment of clarity at a time. This is how we build a life worth living.